Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
What if we told you the most popular diets right now, like keto, paleo, fasting, and even the new pro-metabolic trend are all failing you in the exact same way? You lose some weight, and then you feel tired, stuck, and somehow worse off than when you started, or worse than that, you stop, and then you gain all the way back and more.
Yeah, these it's not your fault, maybe it's a little bit your fault, but the reality is it's not your fault. These diets are treating symptoms, not solving and getting to the cause. So today's going to be fun. We're pulling back the curtain on why those strategies might be sabotaging your metabolism, what to do instead if you want fat loss, energy, and real results that last.
So this is episode number 117 of the Happy Healthy Life. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Rob, and
I'm Dr. Randy.
And we are
the Happy Healthy Guys.
All right, let's dive into this. Yeah, there's so many different things out there, diet trends that are happening right now. And you know what? They all have the same thing in common. They work and then
they don't.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I started experiencing this even myself personally all the way back when I was like 12, 13 years old. And I was doing what the most popular trend was back then. And I guess you could say it's probably the most popular trend right now. Well, there was a lot of different things back then. I remember my mom would always be on these crazy diets. And it was pretty funny because and I don't know if you guys have a mom that was like this, but she would put whatever the diet is that she was doing, she would put it on the refrigerator and, under the magnet. And so I remember under the magnet was she had the boiled egg diet up there at one point. I remember
your house smelled amazing.
What was worse than that was the cabbage diet. That was really nasty.
Yeah.
And then I remember, one evening she was watching, some kind of whatever TV, in the middle of the night, and she ended up buying this thing called the Hollywood Beach juice diet. And so the whole entire refrigerator was filled with juice.
Yeah.
And then she started buying all the lean cuisines, the slim fast shakes. And so you name it, she did it. And it was really funny too, because she always started these things. It was like on Sunday, she was eating whatever it is that she wanted. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm starting my new diet tomorrow. And then that trend happened like every Sunday night. And so here's what I noticed back then about all these things, because I was highly motivated to want to lose weight at 13 years old. Heck, being a chubby fat kid who couldn't attract any of the cute girls because they weren't into the chubby fat kid. I didn't want to be like that anymore. I wanted to be attracted to these girls, just keeping it real here. And so I'm like, you know what, Mom, it's way easier than all these crazy things that you're doing. I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm like, you know what, if you just didn't eat as much, I was learning that what she was really doing was reducing her calories.
Yep.
And so it was all caloric restriction, which is probably still today the most popular thing that people try to do.
Still being taught.
It's absolutely still being taught by nutritionists, especially, telling their clients, you know what, don't eat as many calories, where you need to exercise and move more. So that's what I was doing. And so I'm like, if a little is good, then a lot is going to be better. And so I remember going from 210 pounds at 13 years old all the way down to 124 pounds, which seemed like almost overnight. It's about a 4 to 6 month period. The time it went from spring of my 8th grade year into the beginning of my 9th grade year. So I remember entering high school, which was a new school. And there were kids that I had gone to school with like my entire life that didn't even recognize me because the change was that dramatic. Now, did it make me healthier? Absolutely not. We all know that if you're depriving your body and the cells of the nutrients that they need, that's going to make you sick. And it did make me very sick. I don't even know if I've ever shared this before, but here on the podcast, but at that time, because I was going into the 9th grade, I was going to be playing football in the 9th grade, and you got to go do a physical at the doctor's office. And I remember my mom taking me to the doctor's office to go through this. And remember, I had reduced so much weight in such a short time. My body was not healthy at all. I was really weak, didn't look good at all. And so remember, we get out of the car and I literally passed out next to the side of the car. My mom didn't know where I was. She's like walking into the doctor's office, turns around, and I'm literally laying next to the car. She goes inside. She's freaked out. She gets the doctors, everybody. They bring me back inside. I remember waking up in the doctor's office to somebody handing me some orange juice and some crackers or cookies to eat. And so my body was so depleted of the nutrients that it needed that I passed out. Looking back on it, I would say that I 100% was probably anorexic. And that right there is what really started my merry-go-round and up and down roller coaster journey with my weight. And I thought, even back then, it's like, okay, well, I got to do this a different way. So I really started getting into health. I started, working out. I got certified in being a personal trainer. However, in order still to be able to maintain a healthy weight, it was always the same mentality. I've got to move more and eat less just to be able to stay at a healthy weight. So it was still about caloric restriction. And so obviously that didn't work because forever until I was about 38 years old, is it was still always the same. Is if I stopped the caloric restriction or if I stopped working out, I would always gain the weight back and then more. One of the things that we always teach is that our body has a metabolic thermostat. And so we have a weight set point. So it sets it at a certain weight. And so for me, my metabolic weight set point or my metabolic thermostat was always set at 175 pounds. And no matter what it is that I did, no matter how many calories that I reduced or how much I exercised, my weight always wanted to stay at 175 pounds, which, by the way, for my build, my height was still too heavy for me, but I had just said, well, it's just a genetic thing for me. I'm supposed to be at that weight. And so we're going to talk about why you get stuck like that, why caloric restriction didn't work for me, and it's also not working for you. And I think, for what people need to understand is that the reason that caloric restriction doesn't work is number one is you're just reducing calories. And as you're reducing calories, you're also reducing nutrients. You are really causing damage to your body at a cellular level. And when you look inside the cell and you've got this mitochondria in there, that's how your body officially burns calories or creates energy. And if your body's not creating energy efficiently because it doesn't know how, reducing calories is only going to make that worse. It's not fixing the cause of the problem.
Yeah, no, there you go. It's not, it's diets really, they're all the same. They really are all the same. They're cutting calories. In fact, people get so angry with me, like rage comes out of people when I say salads aren't healthy. Like it literally breaks people's brains when I say that. I'm not saying that salads, you can't eat them or that maybe you don't even enjoy them. I don't know anybody who really, if they're honest, enjoys eating a salad. But if you do, great for you. The point I'm making is it's all part of that diet world because you're bulking your colon and bowel with a bunch of undigestible fiber to make yourself feel full. All the while, you're not able to, instead of eating real food that's bioavailable and nutrient dense, you're creating this fake fullness by bulking with fiber versus getting nutrients. So that's part of dieting is you're eliminating your body's ability to get tons of nutrients. Why would you bulk yourself with fiber when there aren't any nutrients in fiber? You can't break it down. You can't utilize it. It doesn't have any nutrients. You're just basically fasting or causing yourself to feel full. But it goes back to, Dr. Rob, we were talking about this, and we always say the quality of the questions that you ask yourself really is the quality of your life. And this is really one of the questions that people will ask, and it's really not a good question. And you know what I'm probably going to say here. People ask in this world, they're asking in this world full of more obese and overweight people that are chronically sick than ever before is, how do I lose weight?
Sure.
All right. So
Don't
problem, exactly. It goes back to, right, the law of thermodynamics. You got to move, you got to burn more calories than you consume, eat less, move more. But it takes you right back into the diet world. And of course, we know, I mean, I don't know, what would you say? How many diets are out there right now that are people would have access to on the internet, that they've read about, that they've heard about? I mean, who even knows?
You know, I'm curious. I'm gonna look it up.
Okay,
Here
look
in a
it up
second.
while
Yeah,
I'm talking here
yeah.
and see. I remember one of the craziest diets I ever did. This was back in college. A roommate of mine handed me this book, and it was called The Anabolic Diet. Of course, I was at that time in my early 20s in college. It was all about being big and ripped and muscular. I just worked out all the time. I ate 6, 7 times a day. So this book was talking about how you eat tons of fat and no carbs for 5 days, basically to deplete all of your glucose, your glycogen stores, get your body into ketosis. And then for the next 48 hours, the 2 days on, you eat as much carbohydrates and food as you possibly can to refuel your glycogen and to put yourself back in an anabolic state. So you would do 5 days on, 2 days off, and you would do this cycle over and over and over. I remember I ended up getting horrible kidney stones. Although I did use this strategy to place second at Mr. UCA back in the day, I probably would have been first and I would have beat Brock if I'd have known the metabolic strategies we know now. But the point is, it was still manipulating numbers, caloric restrictions, and no focus on real nutrient dense foods. So here's the problem with dieting, and why dieting really is the exact same thing as taking drugs. So let that sink in. Dieting to lose weight is the same thing as taking drugs to manage or treat a symptom. And I'll give you some examples here. You know, if you had a headache and you take Tylenol, and of course the Tylenol takes away your headache, you would look at that outcome and you'd be like, wow, that's incredible. I no longer have a headache. Yet you didn't get to the cause of why you had the headaches. So the headaches will come back at some point once the medication wears off and you stop taking it. Very much so, just like a diet, you can do things to restrict calories and cut macros and starve yourself to lose weight. But just like a medication, when you stop taking it, all of those problems that were there are going to come back, and maybe even worse, just like long-term use of medication. You're treating symptoms. It's like lowering blood pressure with a blood pressure drug. You may lower the blood pressure so you get this outcome that you were looking for, just like you're dieting to lose weight and you lose the weight and you get the outcome you were looking for. My question is, you almost have to, did you become more unhealthy with the strategy that you used to create the outcome you were looking for versus really getting to the cause of the problem? So that's where we want you to stop asking, how do I lose weight? Here's a much better question, is how do I heal my metabolism? How do I get to the cause of why my body struggles with weight? So pause there for a second. Did it give you any data on how many diets are out there?
Yeah, so currently there are well over 1,000 uniquely marketed, documented diets with many thousands more variations of personalized plans. And then it goes back to the main premise of them being this caloric restriction. And that also brings up another question is, why is it, when people are, going on a diet, obviously they're motivated to want to lose weight, but one thing that they have in common is that you've got millions of people who are chasing quick fixes. And so,
just like drugs,
just like, yeah,
it's the same thing.
It's a quick fix. You want this to somehow fix a symptom, right?
Which is the weight gain.
Which is the weight
not
gain,
the problem.
which is not the problem.
Yep.
And you know what? And what we're being taught right now is that people want this quick fix without doing the work. People don't like the word work because it's uncomfortable. So I think that people are wanting to your point, right, with even the salad, as you were talking about that. Yeah, most people don't like lettuce. They like the taste of the salt, the sauce that's on that. That's the comfort to them. Yeah. So many people are chasing this because they don't want to be uncomfortable. I think that's one of the things. I think the other thing is that they're chasing these quick fixes because they also don't want to try to figure out what to do on their own because things are confusing. With 1,000 different marketed diet programs that are out there on the market, it's really confusing. So instead of trying to figure out which one's going to be best for them, I think then what people probably do is go, you know what? The easiest thing that I know that I can do on my own is just not eat as much.
Yeah, it is, and that's why diets are so popular, because it's like you said earlier, they work and then they don't because they did not get to the cause. It's like we've got thousands of diets, yet we're more obese. So clearly we're not solving the cause of why people have a metabolic problem. How many diabetic drugs do we have right now? Do we have less diabetes? How many blood pressure drugs do we have right now? Do we have less people who suffer heart attacks? How many people are on cholesterol meds? We definitely don't have less heart attacks and cardiovascular events. How many people now are taking GLP-1 medications to destroy their health with this nasty rebound of more weight because they didn't get to the cause? So just because you got the outcome that you thought you needed to get does not mean you got to the cause of the problem. And that's where diets fail. That's why drugs ultimately fail. They never actually help you get healthier. So like we always say, you don't want to lose weight to get healthy. You want to get healthy to lose weight. And that's all about asking the right questions. You've got to make that shift. Let's go through maybe some of the popular diets then, Dr. Rob, because a lot of these do work. They've been used by really millions of people, but we're still stuck.
Yeah, and I think, and we're stuck, and this is, just a way to even look at this, regardless of which one of these diets that we go through. If you're still trying to chase losing weight and you're doing it on a broken metabolism, none of these things are going to work. So the first one that we're talking about right now is probably the one that's been the most popular most recently, is going to be a version of the keto diet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we do know about the keto diet is it's definitely not sustainable. And the promise with the keto diet is you're going to be burning fat by eliminating carbs because your body is now utilizing ketones for energy.
Right.
And so that's the big thing with that. But here's what we also know is that the body isn't created to only utilize ketones for fuel and ketones for energy. There can be some benefits there, but the benefits aren't there long term.
No, they're not. In fact, I remember just recently one of our old Facebook Lives popped up from 2017 called Keto Confused.
Oh, that was a
Do you
good
remember
one.
that
I do.
segment?
That was a good one.
Yeah, screaming from the mountaintops over 8 years ago about this confusion and all the seed oils. And that was one of the problems with keto is if you're burning fat for fuel, there was never any clarity on what types of fats you should be consuming and what happened to somebody metabolically if you stay in a long-term fat burning state by giving your body fat for fuel, because fat is an energy source.
Yeah.
The problem is so many people have eaten these omega-6, omega-3, these industrial seed oils, and would even eat them on this keto diet. You can't metabolize them and use them for energy. They're poison. So the body will actually cause your body to make more fat to store it. So you may be losing weight. Usually it was water, it was muscle, it was electrolytes, but you'd get fat in really weird areas because it was such a metabolic poison and how the body had to react to it. And then on top of that, like you said, now you're going to create what's called physiological insulin resistance. And this is one of the problem with all diet programs is the problem is the body now has, especially when you cut out all your carbs, you have to start making your own glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis. And the way the body does that, it breaks down muscle tissue because it needs the amino acids to make the glucose to give your body the fuel that it needs. So that's a stressful response. And in the short term and in crisis situations, it's fine. But long-term keto, not pathological insulin resistance, but it's a body's adaptation, a physiological insulin resistance where now your muscle and your liver no longer take up glucose and you have to make it out of this crisis response called gluconeogenesis. It's not a good long-term strategy. In fact, most of the programs now, especially what we've created, is more of a keto rehabilitation program, because you cannot create metabolic flexibility if your body does not know how to eat carbohydrates. And what does that mean? And the keto world knows it. You come off keto, you eat 2 bananas and you gain 5 pounds because your body's like, what the heck is this? My body doesn't accept glucose and I only make it in small amounts. That is a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. Not only is that the problem, but now your hormones are also wrecked. And so that's a, that's a no-win proposition right there. So now you're frustrated, you're not losing the weight. Your hormones are an absolute, literally an absolute train wreck. And so now that person is at either the T clinic, right? Men and women, right? Now
destroying your thyroid and your sex hormones.
Even more. So that's why that's not a good option. And then, obviously not doing that. You don't want to do that on a broken metabolism, number one. And so, all right, let's talk about the next one. And this was probably more prevalent right before keto, but I think there's some different versions of this now going around as people are talking about more ancestral type eating, but it would be the paleo diet. And so that's where they were like, okay, it's ancestral eating, it's clean eating. We're going to eat a lot of whole grains,
a lot of legumes,
a lot of fibers in there,
nuts and seeds.
But it goes back to the thinking of doing that was because a lot of, many of those foods right there don't have as many calories.
Yeah.
So it's another version of caloric restriction. But what we also find is it's a version of nutrient deficiency whenever you're doing that to the body as well. And your body just can't sustain that long term. And so the reality was it was still low carb and you're still doing that on a broken metabolism. It's not doing anything to actually fix a broken metabolism.
Yeah, it was treating a symptom. And then on the paleo diet, what does that even mean? There wasn't really any really good guidelines because a lot of the paleo diets, you were still eating a lot of omega-6 rich type foods, nuts and seeds, great for squirrels, probably not best for the human body because we already know that omega-6 fatty acids, which is what nuts and seeds possess, this omega-6 oil, it actually prepares the body for what's called torpor. So it's hibernation. So in a metabolic hibernation state, your metabolism becomes very, very slow. So it signals to the body to store more fat for energy, much like a bear before they go into hibernation. They're eating lots of nuts and seeds and eating cold water salmon to get the omega-3s, the omega-6s, all those PUFAs to slow down their metabolic rate. So the paleo diet really put people in some very slow metabolic rates coming out of that, as you were really focused on eating a lot of foods that really didn't make any rhyme or reason, especially when you talk about eating more of the grains and the legumes, which had so many anti-nutrients, which could actually trigger even more weight gain coming out of that. There's an anti-nutrient that we talk about called lectin, and lectin has an affinity to mimic insulin in the body. So eating all those lectin-rich vegetables and grains and beans and seeds, you were actually stimulating the body to be more hungry and to store more body fat. Even though you were cutting calories and you may have lost weight, the body just kind of looked weird. You store fat in weird places. You don't have the energy. You don't create the right amount of heat and energy from the mitochondria. There's just more problems. And like you say, any result you got, as soon as you stop it, just like stopping a medication, the problem's still there and it comes back with a vengeance.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think that's where even a lot of people started going into keto, because you could have the whole grains with paleo, and then all of a sudden you had all these people that started coming up with an intolerance to gluten,
Right.
for example. And so they're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I don't want to get too much gluten, so I'm just going to start pounding fats and proteins instead and not
Yeah.
putting these grains into my body. When it wasn't the gluten that was the problem to begin with. So
Yeah.
again, you're just treating a symptom.
Yeah.
You're not getting to the cause of the problem. And so,
And you don't create metabolic flexibility that way.
Yeah.
If we already know that the body can burn fat, it can burn glucose in a healthy metabolic state. But when you're doing those type diets where they're extreme, or you're cutting something out long-term to create a result, once again, the outcome doesn't necessarily mean that you actually corrected the cause of the problem. And we'll talk more about metabolic flexibility and why we created the happy, healthy, thin metabolism system to truly create a real metabolic flexibility and to get to the cause of why your metabolism is broken.
So speaking of cutting things out long term, that brings us to the next most popular diet that's more current nowadays is going to be a form of intermittent fasting, or what you call OMAD, right? So that's the biggest one right now. So again, it comes back to, you know what, cutting things out. What are people thinking? Hey, I'm going to try intermittent fasting because I'm cutting out all calories now for a period of time.
Wow.
And the thinking with that is going, okay, well, if I do that, then there's some things that happen in my body like autophagy, or maybe the promise is going to be that I'm going to have more energy.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I'm also going to have more weight loss. But I think a lot of people are doing it with the intent that, hey, you know what? Now it's the cool thing to do. I know I can lose weight if I just don't eat, again, caloric restriction, and they're not really getting the benefits because, again, this isn't something that's sustainable long term. Most people can't do it because their body's not fat adapted. As soon as the body starts going, hey, I need some fuel, and its most preferred fuel source in the body is going to be carbohydrates, which is why we do talk about the ability to be metabolically flexible so that you can still burn carbs for energy or glucose for energy, as well as fat. They're just two different energy sources that you got to go between. And so if you're trying to do intermittent fasting and you're doing it on a broken metabolism, ain't going to work for you. It's going to be dangerous for you.
You're going to lose a ton of muscle. Number one, your body is going to become catabolic. It's in a stressful response. It's going to break down muscle tissue and raise your stress hormones like cortisol. Cortisol, that's what cortisol does. If you stay in these stress states, which fasting is a stressful state, if you stay in that, you're going to shred your muscle tissue. You're going to break down collagen. You're going to break down muscle tissue. And we already know muscle is very metabolically active. And the more quality muscle that you have, the more, quote, calories your body can burn in a rested state. So raising your stress hormones, tearing down muscle tissue, that's a lot of times why this new trend with the GLP-1 drugs is not working, and it won't work, and it can't work. Just because you lose weight, you're not getting to the cause, but it's triggering the body to actually break down muscle tissue to create glucose. It's glucagon. It's a glucagon-like peptide. Glucagon is a hormone triggered with cortisol to break down muscle to create glucose. So you're putting yourself into a high stress state. You're depriving your body of nutrients because you're not really eating that much in a fasted state. Your stress hormones are high. You're basically catabolizing muscle tissue. So what does that look like when you come out of that? Right back where you were. In fact, not right back where you were, right back where you were and worse, because now you have less muscle. So you had to become more unhealthy to lose the weight. And now you're going to pay the price going forward. And now some of you, if you've done these diets before and you've yo-yo dieted and you've cut the calories and done the ketos and all the fasting, you're noticing how even maybe if you've gone back and tried to do that again because it worked before, now it doesn't even work the same because your body is smart. If you put yourself into a stressful state like a famine, your metabolism will shut down, and it's a rescue device because your body's like, okay, there's no food. I don't have access to it, so I'm going to shut down my metabolism and I'll store everything as body fat. That way, if I have to live off body fat, I'll do it until there's food again. So you're really setting your body up to be in a fasted famine state, which is where the body will not burn calories. It's going to store anything and everything you even get your hands on. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. And if you're wondering about our Happy Healthy Metabolism products, go to thehappyhealthylife.com and at checkout, use promo code podcast to save 10% off any of our products.
Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. And as always, if you don't know what's going on with your metabolism and you want to find out, go to metabolismscore.com. Yeah, now there's another trend even with that, and it's on the fasting side. I think there's more probably in the biohacker type community, the OMAD. What OMAD stands for 1 meal a day, where people are eating like within a 1 hour window over a 24-hour period. I remember the first time that I ever heard of anybody doing that, I was like, oh my gosh. He only eats one meal a day. You probably remember this because he lives here in the area. You guys may have heard there's a football player. His name is Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
Remember Herschel Walker played
Yeah.
for the Dallas Cowboys. And I used to think, oh my God, if that guy can eat one meal a day, because he's built like a brick house.
Yeah.
And well, that may have worked for him. And I don't know the intricacies of how
We don't have all the context.
Yeah, I don't have all the context of
We don't.
but that was just like the freak of nature type of thing when people just go, hey, you know what? He eats one meal a day.
Yeah.
And so I would say I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend trying that. But it is one of the trends that are out there. I think a lot of people, I guess, are enticed by that or think that that could be a good thing because then they're like, okay, I can eat whatever it is that I want during that one meal. Again, you're not getting the nutrients, you're getting the hormone, just messing up your hormones by doing that as well. And again, you're doing that on a broken metabolism with the expectation that, I can eat whatever it is that I want that one time, and then you're reducing or cutting out all calories the other 23 hours of the day.
And that's really what happens. You're like, if I just get one meal, man, I'm about to go to town and get anything and everything I can shove it in the pie hole. Yeah, it's really it's a stressful place. And so you just binge eat, and then all of that food just gets stored as body fat because your body thinks you're in a famine. There's just not access to food. And hormonally, that's what happens. Your body's not doing the wrong thing. It is doing the right thing. It's like people who are very toxic. Their body's metabolisms will slow down to store more fat to push the toxins into the tissue to keep it from the organs. Your body really is always doing the right thing under the circumstances. The diets are just playing with the numbers and managing the symptoms, much like drug therapy in treating symptoms and never getting to the cause, just to create these fool's gold outcomes. Just losing weight does not mean you're healthy, right? Skinny people get cancer. Skinny people drop dead of heart attacks. Skinny people get diagnosed with every other condition that an obese person gets diagnosed with, because it's not about losing weight. It is about the health of your metabolism.
Yeah. So, okay, speaking of metabolism, so here's the one that's coming down the pipe as far as trend. Okay. This trend, and it sounds good when we're talking about metabolism, but this would be the pro-metabolic diets that are out there. Okay. So they're promising, we're going to support your body's metabolism. But again, if you're trying, that's very generalized. And if you're trying to eat a quote pro-metabolic diet and you're doing that on a broken and
you're done. Yeah.
Broken metabolism, it ain't going to work. And you're going to be frustrated with that as well.
Yeah. You're going to do the honey diet and think that it's going to work and it's going to taste amazing, but you're going to be miserable because there's no way possible you can get yourself into a pro-metabolic state. Number one, if you're not even fat adapted, if your body's toxic, you're loaded and chock full of years of seed oil that's deposited into your tissue that has, a 680-day half-life, along with the body's inability to store glycogen by utilizing glucose effectively. So the pro-metabolic space is interesting. And I get the science behind it because obviously when your body's running off glucose and utilizing glucose in the Krebs cycle to create ATP, you can create more ATP, more heat, more energy, more CO2, and actually create your body's own structured perfect water through the mitochondria, which is ideal in a perfect metabolic state. But like you said, Dr. Rob, if your metabolism is broken, if you're not fat adapted, if you're metabolically inflexible, and if you've got like real metabolic problems, and real metabolic problems are really where a lot of people, this goes even undiagnosed, where you're so metabolically inflexible that your body actually makes glucose in the presence of insulin. That's how metabolically sick you are. That's why people would eat and their blood sugar go through the roof. That is not normal from eating food. That is a metabolic inflexibility where you're eating food, your insulin rises, and now your body's making more glucose in the presence of insulin, so it throws it through the roof, so it jumps up to 180 over 200, and you have this high blood sugar. That is an unhealthy metabolic state. It's not because you ate something sweet, it's because you don't have the flexibility. In this pro-metabolic space, you start throwing a bunch of rice and potatoes and honey and maple syrup and all these carbs and juice into your body when your body doesn't have the ability to even burn fat as a primary source and move from fat to glucose and go back and forth, that flexibility, you're going to put yourself, you're probably going to cause even more damage to your liver because your liver already doesn't even store glucose as glycogen. It is a literally metabolic nightmare. So if you've ever tried the honey diet or tried to, obviously pump your body full of carbs to somehow get into a pro-metabolic state and it didn't work for you, that is one of the reasons why is you're just not metabolically healthy enough to even take something like that on.
Yeah, so unless you've got like a six-pack abs, you're ripped and under like 5% body fat, it's probably not going to be the route for you to take. I think the people that listen are more in of a state of metabolic crisis unless you've been through our program and got yourself a healed metabolism. But
Yeah.
even for people that are listening that are wondering, okay, I wonder if it is my metabolism that is broken. I do know that I need to fix it. Let's talk about some of the ways that you even know if you've got a metabolism problem, and then what are a few things that you can do to be able to get you on the right track for metabolic healing. So I think that if the number one probably telltale sign that you've got a metabolism problem is if you are that yo-yo dieter, that person who does restrict their calories and or exercise more to try to be able to maintain a healthy weight. And as soon as you stop being perfect with those things, you gain the weight back and more. That right there would be a telltale sign that there is a metabolism problem. And I think one of the things right now that is running rampant out there is even just, it's a variation of either feeling exhausted by the end of the day, or feeling like you need to drink like 10 cups of coffee just to be able to get through your day, or you're starting to get some of that just brain fog where you feel like, okay, you're attributing it to old age. I'm just getting older, so I just don't have the memory that I used to. Those are telltale signs right there that people do have a metabolism problem, and restricting calories and doing these things that we just talked about ain't going to fix
It's
that.
going to make it worse and you're going to feel miserable. Another one is if you can't go more than, 3, 4, 5 hours without eating, without blood sugar crashing, that is a huge sign you're not metabolically flexible. And your body, not only does it not have the ability to burn fat, it can't even switch over to burn sugar because hormonally you're a complete wreck from insulin to cortisol to glucagon. All of your hormones are in a complete chaos. So if you can't skip a meal and without feeling, miserable or getting hangry, that right there, and trust me, I know because that was me before I got my cancer diagnosis, and you knew me back then. I was eating 6 and 7 times a day to make sure that my blood sugar didn't drop. I wasn't metabolically flexible. All those insulin hits were making me bigger. Now I worked out twice a day, so I wasn't fat. I was always very muscular, but I was also killing myself because I didn't have the ability to switch over to burn carbs when my body didn't have food. I literally, blood sugar would drop. I was metabolically inflexible, and now I would get hangry. I remember I couldn't even go through a shift seeing patients without taking a break, go back into my office, eat some type of a protein bar just to kind of stabilize my blood sugar. So if that is you and you can't stabilize your blood sugar without having to snack all day long, that is a real metabolic problem. That is a very dangerous place to be because we already know that really all chronic disease is downstream poor metabolic function. Things like diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, arthritis, any of these conditions you're suffering with, any type of thyroid issues, any type of cognitive decline, these are type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 diabetes. This is type 1 insulin resistance across the board. So this is where you have to start looking at your metabolism, not as just the strategy to lose weight. This is your longevity play. This is how your body heals, repairs, detoxes, and you'll never accomplish that by just cutting calories or moving more or doing some latest fad diet, Dr. Rob. This is the lie that we've been sold, and obviously you look around, it isn't working.
Yeah, I think, let's rewind that because that was really good what it is that you just said. I think so many people think about having a poor metabolism being directly related and responsible for the reason that they've gained weight or they're stuck and can't lose weight.
Yeah.
But what you just said is important because there are people who don't have a weight issue
Yeah.
and have a metabolic problem that's leading to all of these different disease processes.
Yes.
Back then, if we would have looked at you, nobody would have ever thought in a million years you had a weight problem.
Never.
You had a health problem, which goes back to we have to start teaching people, and what we teach people is, yes, we are going to help get you healthier so that your body does lose weight. We're not asking, how do you lose weight? We're asking, how do you heal your metabolism? How do I heal my metabolism, for all the reasons that you just said? Because it really is about your health and about these chronic illnesses that people have right now. So let's talk about then a few things that people can be doing right now to be able to get themselves on the right track as far as being metabolically healthy. And I think I'll start with the first one, just being a simple way for you to find out where your metabolism is. You always hear us talk about it, is going to metabolismscore.com so that you can find out, okay, what is my metabolism score? Let me see where my metabolism is at, because even there, we'll give you things that you can start doing to be able to put you on the right path. But the first thing is finding out, do I even have a metabolism issue going on? Okay.
Yeah, that's step one. Find out what's going on there. That's a really simple, easy quiz you can take that'll give you a score so you know where you're at. And one of the problems that a lot of people are dealing with right now and how we can help a lot of you, and this probably is going to fly in the face of what you've been told or even what your doctor or your nutritionist has told you to do, is really you got to start eating again. You've got to start flooding your body full of nutrients. We talk about surfing for our food, simply eating real food. But if you've been this chronic dieter and cutting calories to lose weight, you're in a very low energy state. And one of the best things you can do, and how we coach our clients, is now you got to start eating nutrient dense foods again. You've got to get your body into a high energy state where your body can utilize the nutrients, utilize the fuel, the body can now use the fuel to make more energy, to create an environment where your body is thriving again. Don't stay in that low energy famine state where you've restricted for years and years. You've got to start eating. Start eating 3 times a day of getting nutrient dense real foods, proteins, vegetables, fruits, healthy animal-based fats. Step number 1, stop dieting and start eating real food.
Okay, so let's stay there for a second. Okay, so when we're talking about eating these nutrient dense foods, obviously you've got different sources of energy that your body needs. So your body, obviously, one of those being fats. Your body also is going to need these carbohydrates. Your body also needs proteins in order to be able to heal and repair. So what would be some examples of nutrient dense foods that people can start eating right now to be able to help them with their metabolism? When it comes to proteins, carbohydrates, and fats? What are some good things that people can start eating?
Yeah, I'll always like to start with foods that are the most bioavailable. So what we mean is, when you eat food, what does your body do with it? How much of that food can it actually absorb and get through the small intestine and into the colon? And so your body can utilize it for what it utilizes food and energy for. So those are going to be your ruminant animal-based proteins. So we talk about, like, obviously beef and lamb and deer and elk. You want to start eating foods that have these animals that have multi-chambered stomachs, because when they eat the plants and the grass, they can biohydrogenate these foods. They actually help convert a lot of those plant-based foods into the most nutrient-dense, bioavailable foods that you can consume, along with the healthiest fats. So, start with ruminant animals. Do not be scared of animal protein. Animal proteins are super nutrient dense. And when you eat these proteins, most of that will be absorbed in your gut and not get into the colon undigested. Also, like, another thing to do is start focusing on ripe fruit, which is awesome. I love oranges and grapefruit and citrus fruits. I love, any type of ripe fruit that you enjoy. Those are some of my go-tos. I do like apples as well, which are awesome. Organic is usually always best because you want to avoid any of the chemicals and the pesticides. And then I like also easily digestible carbs like honey, which is great because honey is so easy to break down and utilize for energy. So proteins, easily digestible carbs, and then the vegetables are great, but you got to make sure you prepare those properly, cook those thoroughly. A lot of raw veggies can really disrupt a lot of your gut, can give you a lot of bulky fiber that can really make you feel bloated. So make sure you peel, deseed, ferment, sprout, pressure cook all of these vegetables, but they're real foods: proteins, vegetables, and fruits. And then the fats are going to be animal-based, grass-fed butter, SCT oil, tallow, lard. Make sure you're getting coconut oil. These are all healthy fats. So if you start thinking about eating nutrient-dense foods, you'll get full, you won't overeat, and do that 2 to 3 times a day to kind of get your body back out of that low energy state. you're not going to necessarily gain weight. And if you are gaining weight by eating real food 2 to 3 times a day, that just goes to show how sick you are metabolically, that your body can no longer even break this down and utilize it.
Yeah. So yeah, great. So thank you so much, because those are all do-level things that you can start doing today. Another thing that people can do in order to be able to get your body in a better metabolic state really has to do with just decreasing the amount of stress that you have. And so we always talk about, making sure that you start your day off in gratitude, because here's what happens when your stress goes up, and there's none of us who are immune to stress, right? And we say, the only people that are immune to any kind of stress are the people that are 6 feet under right now. So if you're a human and you're living and you're breathing right now, there is going to be stress. However, it's how you respond to that stress. One of the best ways to be able to help you so that your cortisol levels aren't going up, because that's your stress hormone. When those stress hormones go up like that, what that does is that puts your body into a state of fight or flight. And so when you go into fight or flight like that, your body's going to start storing storing the calories that you are putting into your body as body fat, so that it can be able to utilize it later on down the road to be able to get you out of whatever kind of long-term stress that you've got going on. So starting your day off in gratitude journal is great. Just being thankful for things. It's impossible for your brain to figure out how to be able to be pissed off and angry and grateful at the exact same time. And so it's utilizing and even looking at the different challenges that you have throughout the day as opportunities for growth, opportunities to be better, and allow that to be able to really just flow through you, and don't resist those things. It's letting go of things. It's one of the things that I've been practicing a lot lately, is just the letting go of things that they really just don't matter. I don't want to put myself into a stressful place. It's even been even letting go of people who stress me out, in relationships that stress me out. I ain't got time for bad energy. I only want good energy in. But a lot of people don't realize how much this can impact you when it does come to your metabolism. Even as we're coaching people, there's so many times that we'll be working with somebody and they're doing all of the things that we're talking about, and they're doing them right. And they're like, I can't figure out why it is that I'm not able to lose this weight that I know I need to lose. And then they'll tell us about maybe a family member that just passed away, or they're going through a breakup or a divorce, or they've got financial stress, all these different things.
Yeah, that's why the calories in, calories out model is incorrect, because there are no calories in any of those stressful situations, yet people gain weight because it does affect your stress hormones.
It does.
100%.
So you gotta learn to be able to respond to those stresses better. We can't stress that enough, and we could probably do a whole entire podcast just on that one thing alone, and all the things that you can be doing that aren't diet and/or food based. So we say make sure that you're consuming a diet that's high in vitamin G.
Yeah, that's a great diet to practice. So I'd say, to wrap this thing up, let's do a quick just walkthrough
Let's do
of
it.
how because we've created a system, Dr. Rob, that still blows my mind with the results that we're able to get with people who are metabolically sick, who've done all the diets, even people who are even practicing gratitude, and they're walking after their meals, and they're eating real food. They're avoiding seed oil, yet they feel stuck because really nobody's ever helped them fix the cause. So diets work and then they don't, because you're not going to stay on them forever, and they don't address the cause. We have built out a system, and a lot of you who obviously are in our community know obviously about this system, that is designed to wake up, repair, heal, and reset your metabolism, getting to the actual cause. So the first step, what we do, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is we do get people into a higher energy state coming out of years of dieting, yo-yo dieting, and calorie restriction to prep their body. And then we have a strategy to wake up their metabolism. It's 1 to 2 days where we reawaken that inborn wisdom inside of you that's there to burn these calories and keep you lean, but it has to be woke up. And we have a very special product that we use on that day called our SCT oil. So it's a short chain triglyceride oil that we use to get your body prepped and ready. And then, Dr. Rob, one of the most beautiful things we do to help start healing the metabolism as we've got them prepped and ready and prepared is to go through a retrain phase of our program. It's a 5-week window where we're actually teaching their body how to burn fat, but not just any fat, how to burn their stored fat. That right there, I think is so powerful, the endogenous burn versus the exogenous burn.
Yeah, most people have no idea that they had that much energy. That's like literally, it's like having a garage full of gasoline, but somebody's got the garage door is down, there's a lock on the garage door and they can't actually get in there. So we give them the key so they can open that up. And like you said, it happens in only 5 weeks. So 5 weeks, we've got women who are losing 22 plus pounds in only 5 weeks, men that are losing 30 plus pounds in only 5 weeks. It happens so fast. It's not hard. They're seeing this weight fall off. But the great thing about this is because we are working with the body at a cellular level, we're helping their body to detox of all of the seed oils and the toxins that they've had.
That's huge right there, what you just said. Yeah, because people, that's what diets will never do.
No.
Never do. You guys, you've got years of stored linoleic acid, seed oil in your tissue that literally tells your metabolism to shut down. During that 5 weeks, that's how one of the reasons we get the result is we're detoxing you from stored linoleic acid. Everybody goes, okay, I'm not eating it. What do I do? We have it all mapped out to actually safely remove seed oil from your body. And when you do that, your metabolism is going to upregulate and you're going to be burning more calories at rest. So our average weight loss, like you said, during that time period is 20, 30 or more pounds. So it's remarkable. We're getting people fat adapted, detoxing from seed oil and other chemicals. And then the beautiful part now is once we got you fat adapted and detoxed, now we can get you carb adapted in our reset phase. This is how you create real metabolic flexibility. And we have the system all laid out. So that window is just 3 weeks.
Yeah. So when he says metabolic flexibility like that, that's for that person that's wondering, am I going to have to do this for the rest of my life? Or am I going to only have to eat this way for the rest of my life? No, we want you eating carbs in your body, knowing how to burn calories from carbs. We want you to be eating the proteins and eating the fats and knowing how to do those things so that you are eating all of the foods that you love. So we're seeing people that after the 3 weeks, they are going on vacation for 2 and 3 weeks. For example, like to Italy, we have so many cases where they're like, yeah, I was in Italy for 2 weeks and I actually lost 4 pounds while I was in Italy, eating lavishly, drinking the wines, eating the pastas, eating the pizzas, doing all those different things. So you're looking at that, 5 weeks you're losing this weight, and only 3 weeks you're learning how to reset it so it doesn't ever go back. So you look at that right there, only 8 weeks front to back, and you've got a brand new healed metabolism. It's amazing. So it can happen in a really short time, but once again, it goes back to getting to the cause of the problem. Let's get to the cause of the problem because people are like, well, what do I do next? I'm like, there is no next unless we actually correct the cause and get you a better metabolic foundation to be able to work from. So
yeah, you'd never build a house on the sand. You want to build a strong metabolic foundation. If you've ever built a house with a bad foundation, it costs you more time and way more money. So this is how we're able to do that with this system. So front to back, like you said, we're getting you out of this low energy state. We're detoxing you from seed oil, upregulating your fat metabolism, getting you carb adapted, getting you back insulin sensitive so you have flexibility. So now you can actually go live life on a better metabolism. That is the system that we've created. And there's really nothing else out there, Dr. Rob, that I've ever seen that performs the way our system does. And it's not something you do for the rest of your life. Like you said, it's a system to work and specifically work with you to get your body healthy. So now you never have to be on a diet ever again. And that's called living with real metabolic freedom.
Yeah, so we're about out of time. And the last thing that I'll say to that, and probably the best thing about this system that he's talking about, and we've been talking about, is that it is, like you said, it's customized, it's personalized to you because everybody's body is unique and different. And that's the problem. You can't throw spaghetti up against the wall and expect that all of it's going to stick.
Yeah.
Our results are amazing because it is customized. So, go to metabolismscore.com, check that out. If you got questions for us about the show, topics that you want to hear us talk about, go to Instagram at the H2 Life. You can go to the happyhealthylife.com as well to be able to get all information about us. But I'd start at going to metabolismscore.com. Then if you like the information that you're getting from the show, definitely like it. Give us a review. Give us a comment. 5-star reviews. Don't give us one of those janky like 3-star. That makes no sense and no reason why that is. If you don't like what it is that we're talking about, you know what? Let us know on Instagram. We'll address that to you in person, but don't be passive aggressive about stuff. We don't like that. That's go watch somebody else's podcast. So give us a 5-star review, like it, review it, and share it with your friends.
And people I don't want to hear this either. Like, hey, you guys are always trying to sell your program. You're dang right we are. We're in a metabolic crisis and we have a metabolic solution. Get on board so we can help end this crisis. It's not going to end with more diets or more medical intervention. Ultimately, we have to take responsibility. And those of you in our community, this is an awesome episode maybe to share. Get this out to your friends, your family. Let's really work on helping the people that are in our innermost circle first. It really is a grassroots effort, but it does start with you. So we love you guys. God bless every single one of you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram at the H2 Life or on YouTube and Facebook at the Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.